G'day everyone. Well, with the season about 5 weeks away from starting for the Bombers, I thought I'd share my thoughts about how I think we're going to go, and just a few thoughts I have, actually quite optimistic thoughts, strangely, about how we might go and why I feel this way. It might be delusional, but I feel a little bit different to how I did this time last year, and I was trying to work out why that is. So I sort of listed a few points as to why. For starters, we've had a pretty stable off-season, really, certainly in terms of injuries. I know Ridley did his hammy the other day, but he'll be back probably for the start of the season. It looks like a minor strain for about 3 weeks. And Davey's got a meniscus issue, which will keep him out for the short to medium term. But apart from that, we look in pretty good shape. There's just the usual rough and tumble issues. You know, Cox got a concussion. Mackay has strategically, had that surgery on his ankle so that he'll be ready for the start, or very close to the start of the season, and he's ready to resume, full training pretty soon. Caldwell is pretty much going to be, pretty much ready to resume training after his hip issue. So we've got a pretty sort of, we've had a pretty stable off season, I think, in terms of injuries. There's the usual problems. No one gets through these things unscathed. But the team's going, reasonably well in that sense. And a team like us, we can't really afford to have a lot of players out with injuries. We need full availability, and it's looked like if we're not going to have full availability, we're going to be pretty close for the start of the season. Second is the culture. Now, this time last year, I'm sort of naturally pessimistic. I mean, which is kind of funny with Essendon, because I'm generally an optimistic person with other stuff, but Essendon will make you pessimistic over the course of 20 years of ineptitude. But I think the loss of Jake Stringer is probably a bit of a blessing in disguise. I think culture is the most important thing in a football club, or any business really. I mean, you can have the best team in the world, but at the end of the day, if your culture is bad, and culture is learned behaviour, that's what it is, then you're not going to be able to have any real success. And some of the things I've heard about Stringer, both first hand and second hand, his influence on the club was negative, shall we say. Potentially bad influence on some of the younger players, and unreliable in terms of his not coming back fit, which is always an issue for him. And now he's somebody else's problem. And yes, we can't replace his 40 goals, but I think the advantages of Stringer leaving the club are going to be better than the disadvantages of him going. I think he's one of those players that was probably more trouble than what it's worth. And now he's somebody else's problem. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And some of the things I've heard, the vibe around the club seems pretty good. It seems pretty positive, and I think those things going forward, sorting out the cultural issues, and it looks like Scott, these things don't happen overnight, but I think now into his third year, if you can sort out the cultural issues by the third year, you should really start to see some results. And that sort of leads me to, now it's his third year. When he came to the club, there was a issue with the development. That was really the area where we had struggled more than anything. Not so much drafting, although you can argue that, but it's really just turning the draftees into their potential, making them reach their potential. And we increased our development coaches from, I think, 2.5 to 5. And we've just hovered for the last 2 years around our usual position of 11 wins, 11 losses, or thereabouts. There's always a little bit of a lag with these things. I mean, if you make some changes, there's often about a 2-year lag before you start to see results. Now Scott's in his third year. I think And with that focus on development, I'm sort of optimistic that we'll start to see some results with that this year. I mean, you can argue, well, why haven't that happened in the last couple of years? Look, it doesn't happen straight away. It doesn't happen straight away, right? You know, none of these things happen straight away. So, but I think now in his in the third year, I think it's probably time to reasonably expect some results from the development of players like Cox and Perkins and players like this who are high draft picks who have clearly got talent and probably should be producing more than they have. So I'm kind of optimistic that we're sort of going to see some results this year. I mean, it's just a feeling I have. I mean, like I said, I wasn't feeling like this last year, and maybe it's just sort of, you know, that hopeful, you know, more than anything. But it's just something about the feeling at the moment. It just feels like we're, you know, trying to, you know, on the verge of building something. I think, at least, like, I hope so.
Because he is truly that delusional.
It leads me to probably the last point, which is Essendon, and I think most of you will relate to this, has been terrible with meeting expectations. Well, whenever we're talked up, we fail. And
yes, that's true.
now that can mean before the season we get talked up and we fail, before a big game, after we've had a winning streak and we're sort of talked up as being, remember last year we were touted as being a top 4 team. As soon as that sort of happened, the wheels fell off. I mean, Essendon has been terrible at handling expectation. Well, for the first time in a long time, there is zero expectation around Essendon at the moment.
Because they're shit.
And it's kind of unusual to be under the radar. We're probably, I think, if you look at the 18 teams, sorry, we're probably the most under the radar team at the moment. You know, there's always an over the radar team, there's always some under the radar teams, but we are very, very much under the radar. Pretty much every single person is tipping us to finish 4th last. You got, you know, the North Melbourne, West Coast, Richmond trio expected to finish, you know, in the bottom 3, and pretty much everyone that you see on all their predictions are pretty much putting Essendon 4th last, almost by habit. I don't think there's a lot of analysis in that. It's more just, well, you know, it's Essendon. You know, I've got no reason to put them higher. Let's just put them there. But I think under the radar is a good position for us, because we do not handle being over the radar. We do not handle expectation.
Truer words have never been spoken.
And we're a big club, been a big club for a long time. So we're nearly always in a position where we're not under the radar. There's always a lot of expectation on us. There's always a lot of talk about us. The media is always talking about us. There's very little talk about us at the moment. Very little. And I think that suits us pretty well. And all those things put together, I just feel a little bit more optimistic than perhaps I think, maybe more than is warranted. But look, I've been to over 500 games. I booked my ticket the other day to Gold Coast for round 1. I'll be up there in round 1. Looking forward to that. It'll be my second time going to the Gold Coast for an Essendon game. And I just feel it's been a pretty stable pre-season. I just think a stable pre-season, fixing up the cultural problems, being under the radar, not having to deal with expectation, having a pretty stable pre-season with injuries. And even our list, the issue really is talent, not so much the structure of the list. If you look at the structure of our list, we've pretty much got most of the positions covered. It's really just an issue of talent. I mean, you know, we've got the backman, we've got, you know, Ridley, Reid, you know, Mackay, you know, Laverty, even though Laverty probably not in the best 22, but, you know, we've got the reasonable midfield, you know, with Merritt being the only A-grade player. But we got, you know, Parrish and Durham and Caldwell and Martin. You know, there's plenty of options in the forward line. Even if big 2-metre Peter isn't performing, you know, you got Langford down there and Caddy and the youngster Karka. I mean, we've got a pretty well structured list. The issue really is talent. Even the ruckman, we got, like, I mean, I know, look, I'm not a fan of Draper. I think he's overrated, but we got 2 talls in Draper and Bryan, and then you got you know, Wright, who could potentially ruck on it if he needed to. So, you know, even the list is kind of well structured. It's just an issue of talent and development. It's not like some teams, like you look at North Melbourne, where they just haven't got any key backmen. They just haven't got any. I mean, they just, that's an area they just haven't got. We've got most positions covered. It's just an issue of, you know, of talent, so, or development, I think. So, you know, putting all those things together, you know, I'm kind of optimistic, but perhaps more optimistic than I should be. I don't know how you guys feel. I just think with the, you know, sorting out the cultural problem, I think the big one is getting rid of Stringer is actually a blessing in disguise, and I think it's a big move, and it was a bold move, and I think it's going to be good for us long term, right? I really do. I think that'll be good for us long term. Sometimes there's just some players, and I felt like this with Favola at Carlton. He's really good. He was a fantastic player at Carlton, but is he the type of player you want to deal with? Always with, you know, issues, off-field issues, and, you know, behaviour issues and things like that. And everyone loves the guy, and I'm sure everyone loves Jake as well. But sometimes it's just best not to have to deal with these issues and just get on with it. So I reckon, you know, with a reasonably stable off season, sorting out the cultural problems, not dealing with any expectations, I'm kind of weirdly optimistic. I don't know how you guys feel. Like I'm more optimistic now than what I was last year, which sounds kind of weird, because with the loss of Stringer, the team, at least on paper, in theory, doesn't look as good on paper. But of course, there's a lot more to it than that. There's so many variables in a football team, of a list of 40 players. There's so many things that go into producing a good team. And I just think with all those things put together, the culture, reasonably stable off season, you know, the lack of expectation, I really like the fact that we're under the radar. Haven't experienced this mainly at I mean, normally everyone's talking about us, either rightly or wrongly, for, you know, reasons good or bad, but people aren't really talking about us much, you know, whether it be for good reasons or for bad reasons, right? The only talk you see from at least opposition supporters is just when they're doing their ladder predictions, and you've got to put them in your ladder, and Essendon are right there, usually in around 15th or, you know, 14th or 15th spot. So what do you guys think? We're about 5 weeks away from the start of the season, hoping we can cause a bit of an upset in this first match. We're building towards it, so I can't wait to get up there. It's going to be fun. I'm going to do a vlog of it. So what do you guys think? Am I delusional? Do you guys see the point I'm making? I mean, I'm not really trying to be over the top with this, but you know, I get, I'm not expecting miracles or anything, but I think that we might possibly, you know, being under the radar might be a position that suits us, and you know, might help us a bit going forward. You know, kind of optimistic about where we're at, and I think the pre-season so far has been pretty solid, which is a positive. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and have a great day.